A players want to work with A players. Top talent wants to work with well-run companies. Their long-term success is tied to the success of who they join.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. I'm your host, Rob Schultz, and today we have Gary Leeman. Gary, welcome.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and like we were talking about a while ago, that baritone voice, man, that is awesome. This is going to be great. It's going to be fun to listen to you, Gary, today talk all about things EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. You're an implementer and expert extraordinaire on Gino Wickman's book, Traction, and the process that has grown out of that you need to hear about. You know, we've talked a little bit about EOS before. You know, sometimes just the terms come up and things like that on the podcast. But this concept and, you know, the organization of these concepts for entrepreneurs in that small to mid-sized business space, closely held business owners, is just absolutely huge for so many people, and being able to break through and create scale and just grow, right? Yeah.
It's what is truly interesting about EOS, as you said, right? The complete system to help entrepreneurs and small and growing companies, but it is in fact holistic. The whole of it works. Individual pieces can be very impactful, but it's when you put the entire package together that you really get the lift. And when you see that happen, it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. So how'd you get into this crazy business of being an implementer / I like to use the term consultant. I know y'all don't like that. But you know, being basically a coach, an implementer, somebody who's going in and helping these businesses achieve great things. You know, what kind of set you up for that? Why did you head that direction?
Well, so I wish I could say I'd intended to set out my career to end here, right? Make this a success story of achieving the goal. But I grew up in a family that ran a truck repair business, and from a very early age, I just assumed I was going to go and work in that business and then inherit it one day.
Where was that?
I was in New Jersey. My grandparents ran a very successful big truck repair business.
Yeah.
And so I had a life plan from age 5. Unfortunately, my grandfather had passed away, and my grandmother held on as long as she could. But by the time I was accepted into college, she ended up having to sell the business.
Yeah.
And so I began my career in an engineering role in medical products, and never understood really why successive jobs didn't seem to work out so well. And it turns out I was just a frustrated entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. Which we don't make good corporate employees. So I had an opportunity to join a startup, and it was on my list. I'd always wanted to help grow and build a business. And so I took the leap, and I joined a small software company startup as their chief operating officer.
Is this still in the medical space or?
No.
Oh, really?
No, I had transferred a number of times.
Okay.
Yeah, I went medical products to MBA to Starbucks of all places.
Yeah.
To Cheddar's Restaurant Company.
Okay.
And then I did the startup, and it was exactly what I was hoping. The fast pace, the able to make decisions every day and see the results of those actions, you know, figuring something out, watching it take hold in the market, that was awesome. But the pain of chaotic entrepreneurship was painful beyond what I realized I was getting into.
So explain that. What do you mean by that?
So, you know, the concept of if this doesn't catch in the market and we don't pick up 2 more customers, we may not be able to make payroll.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The constant, churn of ideas without a direction, without a clear vision, the lack of process, all that almost seems like it's required in a startup. But once you start to build a product and pick up customers and have to deliver consistently, the way a entrepreneurial, visionary-led, small startup works doesn't transfer to a small and growing company. And so as you start to grow, all these pains of not having systems in place and not having alignment and not having mechanisms to solve problems as they come up, that makes life very challenging. So long hours and a lot of stress.
Okay.
And we got lucky.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because everything, I always just kind of think that our lives are just constant transition. That you're always in transition of some type.
That's right.
I really believe that. Reinventing yourself, whatever you want to call it, but if you just don't sit there and do the same thing day after day for very often. It doesn't seem like in the United States of America.
That's right.
As a business owner. So what you're describing is, obviously in startup, just those fire drills and the stress and the frustration of stuff just coming out of left field, people not doing what they're supposed to do. Just that's no fun at all, right?
People not even knowing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, oftentimes it's not a particular employee's fault that they're not executing. If they're not clear on what we're trying to accomplish, if our vision is changing, our direction is changing all the time, how do you keep people aligned? And so after a couple of years, we got really fortunate. One of our early customers sold his business, wanted to invest, but he had one condition, that we implement EOS.
Huh.
And I can tell you within 2 or 3 weeks, like my life changed. It was, having 25 years, getting the MBA, I had heard all the buzzwords. I'd read the management books. I'd seen new leaders come in with new regimes. And I've never seen it actually change the way people do work. You go to this town hall, you get this rallying cry, we're going to be laser focused on the customer. You go to your next meeting and nothing's changed.
Yeah.
EOS was not like that at all. EOS was literally, our leadership team meetings became really impactful. We got to the bottom of root cause issues. We aligned on vision, and we started to gain traction to steal the.
Sure.
And I'm telling you, within 3 weeks, I was starting to annoy my friends, telling them you should run your meetings like an L10. I'll show you how. Right? It just fundamentally changed the way we operated the business, and we began to grow. And we grew. We had a record January, and then COVID hit in February.
Mm-hmm.
And having that structure in place, having mechanisms to make quick decisions and align the whole team, monitoring our data, really knowing where we were at any given point, helped us survive that. And as we came out, we went in May at 40,000 a month recurring revenue, May of COVID year. The following August, we were at 270,000 a month recurring revenue. Wow. I went from a team of 2 to a team of 20 in 15 months. And I guarantee you that would not be possible if we were not operating with EOS.
Yeah. So not only is it something that allowed you to get to the next level with regard to just kind of removing some stress out of your life and the fire drills and being able to make progress, but it also protected the company from external forces like COVID. You can name, how many external forces are there out there that affect our companies?
That's a great point. Most people view it as, okay, let's take the next level, or we're stuck in growth, or we're hitting a ceiling. And so bring in an operating system and start to really grow your company.
Yeah. We
miss the fact that if you're operating on a system, you actually can weather the storms much more effectively. Look, business is a game of attrition, right? It's for the most part, sure. The longer you stay on the dance floor, the more successful you'll be. And it's not always up, up, up.
Right.
And so all these changes that are coming, how can you get ahead of them and take advantage of them as opposed to be a victim of circumstance?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that's something that's kind of going through my head right now. We're developing a talk right now, just this time of year, obviously, and in a new presidential cycle. You want to talk about, economic stuff, so people rely on us to talk about economic stuff. And there's only one way to describe what's going on, in Washington right now. It's massive change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that change, it's hard to know which direction it'll go for specific businesses. Is it going to be an opportunity or is it going to be a threat? And, there's a lot of unintended consequences that come out of big changes that come out of Washington. So it's not all like, oh, yay, we're going to, cut all the red tape and it'll be great. It's not going to be that way for everybody, just like COVID wasn't.
Right.
COVID, it was a big change and it didn't affect every business the same, not in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, yeah.
There are some that, that just took off.
Yeah.
And others that are no longer with us.
Right.
It's just it's amazing how change is a separator like that. And like you said, if you're in business, I mean, your number one priority should be to stay in business.
That's the prerequisite. That's right.
Yeah. And so you have to have something that's going to help you, weather the changes when they're bad, and take advantage of the changes when they can potentially be good for you. And
right.
Having a structure in place makes sense. Something you were talking about earlier, EOS is great. It has all these different components to it.
Right.
Each one is great. It's almost like individual lessons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And each one of them has benefit to them for sure. You can implement it. You can go back to we used to say, okay, well, if you can go to a talk and if you get, one good nugget of information out of it, it was worth your time, right? Go and just implement that one thing and it'll move the bar a little bit. But your experience was, all in, jumping off the diving board all the way in, man, like the whole thing. And it sounds like that you believe that exponentially can change the company.
Yeah.
So explain to me how that is, that these individual pieces, obviously are good, but you got to jump all in. Because I will tell you, I hear people talk, been through EOS or thinking about going through, and they're like, man, I just don't want to drink all the Kool-Aid. I just want some of it. I don't want to be just a complete freak, right?
Yeah.
So can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had customers, right, clients of mine, that they kind of pull back a little. Often the first pullback is the visionary leader who feels that process will cripple innovation, right? And
okay.
Gotcha. They really feel like, don't put me in a box, right? Get a system for everybody else, but I'm the font of ideas. I'm the leader. I'm going to come up and create,
Doesn't
massive.
EOS just almost do that? Doesn't it kind of let the
it does.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And that's the irony, right?
Yeah, because nobody's putting any restrictions. As a matter of fact, I think that the system actually releases that individual a little bit.
100%, and that's because you have a deeper understanding of EOS. But that's usually an original fear of an innovative company or a true visionary leader. And once they start to understand that they're not burning mental calories on every facet of the company, because a lot of these like visionaries that have started a company and built it and have seen some success, they literally think about every part of that business like every day because they have to.
Yeah.
And when you put it in a system and they have a clean scorecard that lets them know that things are on track, they know that people understand what they're supposed to do and they're doing things the right and best way every time. As they grow to learn that, it frees them up to really embrace what they do, which is drive culture, make big strategic decisions, come up with new ideas. And then there's a mechanism in which they can get to market efficiently and actually work and not stop everything else that's happening.
So they have a concern about this, but really the system is designed to free them up a little bit.
Absolutely.
What are some other areas where you see a little bit of pushback where kind of people don't jump all the way into the pool? What are some other ones?
Yeah. I'll tell you a couple of stories, but I do want to answer that one question. piecemeal versus the whole system.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we started. So I thought when we started implementing that, hey, if we can just run a really effective L10, what we call our leadership team meeting weekly, right, we gain so much value out of it. And then you start to dig into how do you really conduct an effective leadership team meeting, and you realize, well, we're going to review the scorecard and check out all of our metrics. Well, that means we're going to be strong in the data component. We need to have an understanding of our metrics, record a scorecard, and actually take action on it when numbers go off. We need to have a clear plan for the quarter and the year, which we review every week, which means we have to get good about setting priorities and what to work on. So you start to understand that if you don't have a strong data component, if you don't have a strong traction component, a really well-run leadership team meeting can only be so effective, right? So this is the beauty of EOS, is that each piece supports the whole. And once you have each piece, you don't have to be perfect in each piece, but if you address each piece of your business, what we call our 6 key components, that's when the true lift happens, right? So one of the big fears that I have, it almost always comes up right before our first session with a client. The owner or the leader expresses concern that somebody on their leadership team is going to have a freak out. They're going to push back. They may not be up to the task. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
It's got to be like almost every time.
It's I haven't seen a situation yet where that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's hard, it's easy for me, having been through it, to trust the process. But how do you get somebody to embrace it and trust a process that doesn't really yet understand the process?
Mm-hmm.
And so, the joke I tell in Focus Day, our first session, is I've never seen anyone fired in the meeting, right? But the turnover that I see that happens in that first, say, month is long overdue. It's necessary. It happens organically, and most of the time, leaders self-select out.
Yeah, I bet that's right. Yeah.
And so think about how much easier it is. Maybe you've had somebody with you for the first 6-7 years of the business, and maybe they helped you with books and they've done accounting, but they are just not up to the task of really being like a CFO, right? But you don't want to make that change, right? You're vested in this person. You may love them outside of work, yet they're just not what you need in this seat right now. There's nothing in EOS that has a hard rule about give somebody, their package upon, completing the day. We don't have to offboard anyone immediately. When people choose, there's a concept we call get, want, and have capacity to do a role.
Right.
If they don't understand the role, or they don't want to do that elevated role with the additional responsibilities, they don't feel up to it, well, they don't want it then. And if they make a decision they don't want it, it's good for them and it's good for the leadership team. It's good for the owner, right? They understand, okay, the company needs something different now. It's not a role I can fill. So we see some organic turnover early on that is never as impactful or scary as it sounds. Because remember, that person's going to continue doing probably what they've been doing. So they're either going to accept a role, maybe they're going to be the controller and not the CFO. So they keep the lights on, they stay engaged, but they understand fully that they're not going to step up into. And so we start to figure out how to fill that need in the company. Sometimes they were just not a culture fit. They were the problem, but maybe they were the superstar, or maybe the business thought, wow, how do we survive without this person, right? If Janet leaves, we're going to lose our key accounts.
Oh, you hear it all.
You hear it all the time. I've every time you have what we call a core value fit problem, like when they're not aligned with the true core values of the company, and ultimately, you've heard all the terms. These are troublemakers. They're prima donnas. They cause a lot of chaos, but yet you're worried, right? They seem to be like super important for a particular part of your business, and what's going to happen if they leave. it is surprising, but they are sucking energy out of your organization in ways you don't see. And so when they do leave, 9 times out of 10, we see a lift overall in performance, and you don't skip a beat. And 1 time out of 10, there's some short-term pain, some remediation you have to do. But that short-term pain is always worth it because 2 reasons. When somebody is not a fit, they are causing extra work and drama for other people in the organizations. So it's impacting so many people's roles that you don't see. Once they're gone, everybody can just get their work done easier, less effort, what have you. But the other thing is, if they are truly that important, they're using that against you. And if you allow that to happen, you'll never get a new culture, right? If you say we want everybody to behave this way, except this one person who's a rock star, except for her, then you'll never get an intentional culture.
Yeah, you have basic dysfunction, and
it's got to be universally applied, and it's very scary to do it. But once you make that step, it frees you up, and I see an immediate lift. Like I said, 9 out of 10 times I see immediate lift. And you know what? For that one company that had to do some remediation, short-term pain for long-term gain. They'll win by the time the quarter's over, and they'll never get there. They'll never create the kind of culture they want if they allow the superstars or the top performers to behave differently, right? Because then it's for everybody else except, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, but the hardest thing is, I hate, I know people can relate to this. I hate having to do the things that I know I have to do that I don't want to do. And I will tell you, of course, at the very, very top would be obviously, helping a team member decide that they don't want to, they can't be a part of the team anymore, either through a termination and or something mutual, whatever it may be. Because recruiting somebody is so hard, when you're a small to mid-sized business, and it's just hard to find good people. And you find somebody that is somewhat talented and has all the chops, except for they just don't fit, right, for one of those 3 reasons that you mentioned. You have to do something hard, but I will say, like years ago, I had a really key person that was working for me or with me on the team, and she decided to go elsewhere. And as she walked out the door, I had this massive, just unsurprising wave of relief that came over my body, and I was like, "Where did that come from?"
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is exactly what needed to happen. Not that she was an awful person or not, or anything like that. It's just, it wasn't a fit. And, I was too stupid to realize it, but she was smart enough to realize it and, kind of moved on, and no question, elevated from that point,
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I know. The point you made about, I think this drives a lot of the fear. But how would I replace them?
Yeah.
Right. So they're our key contact for like our 2 biggest accounts, and they've been with us a long time. So they know how we operate. They have the history. They've got this deep relationship. Replacing that seems impossible at some point, right? And so you're willing to kind of deal with the issues that arise for this particular industry, this particular individual. The fact is, A players want to work with A players.
Right,
Top talent wants to work with well-run companies. They don't want to join a chaotic, questionable culture, inefficiently run company, because their long-term success is tied to the success of who they join, right? It doesn't look good on anyone's LinkedIn profile, right, to be brought in as CFO of this company and 2 years later that company's bankrupt. Maybe through no fault of your own. right?
Yeah, still, yeah, I see your point. So,
And
so there's got to be an elevation of the quality of the people that
yes,
you're hiring. So I want to talk about that, but let's take a quick break.
sure.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Whether it was one generation ago or 7, more than likely as an American, an ancestor of yours took an extreme level of risk in order to create a better way of life for themselves, their family, and eventually you. Most families have a story to tell, at least one story. My family ended up here in Texas when their wagon broke down in Del Rio. The wagon train they were a part of continued westward, only to be completely massacred. I'm Rob Schultz, founder of Schultz Wealth. Our clients are entrepreneurs and business owners, the beneficiaries and true torchbearers of our American pioneer legacy. Our clients are not afraid of change. They are hopeful about the future, and they create wealth for themselves, their people, in this country through innovation, creativity, and hard work. Our job at Schultz Wealth is to help make sure it counts for something. If you're a successful business owner, let Schultz Wealth help you to the next level and beyond. All right, we're back. So we were talking about, well, just terminating folks, and or the bus kind of moving on without some folks. And we've talked about it before on the podcast with some really, really smart business owners that have been able to scale. And what they've said is that part of being able to scale means that you have good people.
Yeah.
And there's no other way to say it, but the quality of the folks that are on the bus definitely increases as you scale and you get larger and more efficient. True or false? What do you think?
It's not always the case.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Fair.
But those companies that do continue to grow without raising the quality of the team,
yeah,
they tend to hit a hard stop and things start to fall apart quickly. You can drive people to work harder, right? You can bring in more business and you can kind of force it through a system. But at some point, if you don't have people who've upped their game to, say, handle an expanded role, right, issues will start to pop up, problems will start to happen. And if you're not tracking it before you know it, this person you thought could handle 5 accounts who, handled 2 beautifully for the last couple of years is now there's a mess everywhere. All the accounts are not being served well.
Yeah.
And it just happens, right? It's that tipping point of that kind of last bit of extra business crashes a system.
Okay, so you can have the same team members. It's
Yep.
just that their roles get elevated to a very high degree in order to scale.
Right. So to stay successful, the owner too.
So a lot of times the owner is probably the biggest problem in the room.
Yeah, that's always the most fun conversation.
What do you do in that situation?
I tell you, about half of them, they raise their hand early and they realize that they're in the way.
Okay.
And they're looking for a way to make a change because they realize they're the bottleneck. They realize they cannot keep solving everybody's problems. They can't have a team of leaders that comes in and says, "What do I do?" Right? At some point, that will no longer scale, right? Everybody's got a human capacity. If you don't delegate effectively, and up your game as a leader, none of your leaders will, and none of your organization will, right?
All right.
It always starts with the
care of half of them. You said that half of them are self-aware enough through the process.
Yeah. What do you do with the other half?
What do you do with the other half? Because they still own the joint, right?
Yeah.
What happens there?
Well, that's the beauty of the system.
Okay.
Even if people they have a decision to make and they know they need to make a decision, but they're reluctant to make that decision. When you're running your weekly meetings, when you're being open and honest as a leadership team, and when you're looking at your data every week and you've got your processes being followed the right way every time, and you're actually building an organization with clarity and role, it becomes next to impossible for that visionary owner leader to continue to hide from the truth, right? If they resist originally, eventually they start to see, because all roads end up leading to Rome, if you will, right? You solve the other issues, you get, say, process under control, you have the rest of the organization, structured correctly, the right people in the right seats. Your data is telling you whether you're meeting your goals or not, and you're still having issues. Well, if we've been methodical in knocking through root cause problems or root cause issues and making problems go away, the problems that start to bubble to the surface are generally because the leader's holding on too much, or the leader's too involved in things, and they come up naturally through the issue solving process.
Oh, that sounds so stressful. Because certainly if it's the owner, but really even if it's any top level
Yes.
leadership, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a lot of drama too.
That's the all right. So my personal experience with it in our company,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything more dramatic than running a growing company that's growing at 3x, 4x without a system. There's drama every day, right?
Right. But there are certain things that are left unsaid under the surface, but your process is bringing all that out on top.
Yes.
And there's got to be some interesting conversations that happen at that level that all of us would want to avoid.
I think it's human nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
This is probably the biggest reason that I let people know that my clients self-select. Right. I don't sell EOS to anybody.
Yeah.
Inherent in EOS is the owner, the leader, needs to be more afraid of status quo than they are of change.
Well,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
We talked about earlier, change is constant.
Because I mean, if all you want to, and there's nothing wrong with it, but if you've got your company where you want it to be and you're financially full and satisfied, then that's great. But you don't need to bring all those things to the surface.
That's right.
And you can just go. But if you really have that drive and desire to go to the next level, then these things have to come to the surface and they have to be dealt with. And there's got to be drama, and it's got to be brutal in some cases.
It absolutely, there are painful days.
Yeah.
But there are painful days in any company. If you're operating without a system, there's painful days.
Yeah.
There's missing numbers. There's worrying about payroll. There's losing a big account.
Sure.
There's competition coming into your market. There's pain in business, no doubt. The lack of control that people feel is a deeper kind of pain. It's like existential, right? It gnaws at you. Again, if you're looking to run if you've got a lifestyle business, you've reached a certain level of success, and you're the king of the castle, there's no need to change. If that was your ultimate goal, God bless.
Yeah.
Right? God bless. That's the leader with a bunch of high-powered assistants, if you will. Right? It's a solo leader with a bunch of assistants. But if you want to actually scale and grow a company, if you want to be a great company, if you want to, let's say, transfer this to a family member or transfer it back to the leaders that help you build it through like an ESOP program, you know that you can't stay in the same model that got you here, right? What got you here won't get you there.
Sure.
So if you want to get there, you don't have to use EOS or any of the other operating systems. You're going to really struggle to get there. So are you willing to be open and honest with yourself and others and embrace the change? And change is always painful. Somebody told me when I went to B school, I mean, it's one of those random quotes that just stuck in my brain forever. If you're not ruffling feathers, you're not making change.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Right? So there is no such thing as painless or dramaless change.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely necessary change. Status quo eventually kills all businesses, right?
Yeah. Well, unless, I mean, if you've got a lifestyle business, as you called it, or, you've got, just a good business that's gotten to a certain level and you're not going to take it to the next level, you sell it for a multiple and move on.
That's right.
I mean, and it's all
Great.
good.
It's all good. Yeah.
And or, the other alternative is to try to elevate your own abilities as well as that team around you and the company all together and take it to the next level yourself, which
right.
some people, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, I think, I've met a lot of what we call serial entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely their key skill is to start something and build it to the point where it needs to then take that next step in maturity. And they don't enjoy that.
Yeah, and they sell it and they go start another one.
They sell it and they go start another one.
Yeah.
So whoever's buying that didn't buy it for it to just stay there and peter out. They bought it with a multiple factoring in growth.
Yeah.
So if you don't, right, what got you here won't get you there. So that original founder, that entrepreneur who sold the business, built something fantastic, sold the business, whoever bought it needs to grow it to get their money back, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And so change is inevitable. They're going to have to put systems in place. They're going to have to look at their leadership team. Whoever bought it is not a clone of the original person. They can't possibly have everything in their mind that person did. So, we got to start getting our data figured out. We got to start documenting our processes. We got to make sure the org structure is correct. All these things are inherent. They're going to have to happen, right? And so we just provide a complete system, if you will, plug and play, where if that is your issue today, you can strengthen the 6 key components of your business and achieve those goals.
Yeah, and so mentioning that, so one of the, I guess, misnomers sometimes when you talk about EOS operating system is that it's operations, but it's really not. It's designed for all components of the business.
Right.
I think of it as the 3 components. He said 6, but I think of 3, like, accounting, operations, and sales.
Okay.
But whatever it may be, you have to be able to achieve at all of those levels. If you have one that's lagging, it's a problem. And this system is designed for the leadership to be able to deal with all of it across the board, the entire organization.
That's right.
Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah. So let me go along your analogy here, and then I'll explain a little bit of what those 6 key components and why they work together.
Okay.
So with your analogy of, say, 3 functions, when we begin and we help a client structure their organization, we start with the principle that every business, and again, this is for-profit business with a product or service that has a place in the market already.
Yeah.
Right. This is, if you don't have an idea yet for a product, EOS is about execution. It's not about innovation per se. So
Gotcha.
you're an ongoing concern. You're selling a product or a service in the market. There are 3 fundamental truths about any business at that point. You've got to have a marketing and sales function, right? Somebody to create awareness and demand for your product, somebody to turn that into orders, marketing and sales. You have to have an operations function. In other words, somebody to make or deliver the product or service. And you have to have some sort of financial, tracking the money in and out, making sure you're doing things profitably, keeping control of assets. These are universal. Now, you may not have a CFO and a COO per se, but these functions need to exist. Okay. What happens when you have a really strong marketing and sales team and a really strong financial team, but your operations team is no good?
You're not going to be able to execute on all those orders. Yeah.
Right. So you're going to have high turnover with your customers, and you're not going to be as profitable. Right. Because cost of acquisition of customers and rebates and rework and warranty, yada, yada. So what happens if you're really strong in sales and marketing, strong in operations, and weak in finance?
Well, you can't account for it properly.
Yeah.
You have no idea where you are.
You have no idea where you are. You can't forecast. You can't make plans. You're not necessarily doing the things most profitably. And then vice versa. If you've got a great ops team and a great financial function, but you're weak in sales and marketing,
You're all dressed up with nowhere to go.
Yep, and you'll be soon out of business.
Mm-hmm.
You've got great people waiting for the work, right? So in the micro, to your point, it has to be a system. They all have to be strong,
Yeah.
right? When we talk about the business operating system, we look at the 6 key components, which is vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction.
Yeah.
All right. So vision, simply, do we have a clear vision? Does everybody know what that is? And are they all bought into helping achieve it? Are we all rowing in the same direction? It's very simple if you think of it that way.
Yeah, that's always fun. That part.
It's great. And most companies don't fail because they don't have a vision. They're failing because not everybody is aware of it or rowing in the same direction, like bought into it. Right? You have to have great people. Right? So
I talked about that.
We've borrowed the term right people, right seats. Right? You have to have people. If you want an intentional culture and you want people to really work effectively together, your core values matter. And then right seats is a matter of, do they have the experience, the skill, the capacity, and do they want to perform the function they're in? And do you even understand what that function is and what it needs to do? That's how you get people. Data is simply, you got to move from, gut emotional driven decisions into actual data driven decisions. And more importantly, you've got to move to a concept that we need to understand how to control through data. How do I build a point, a metric that is a rumble strip on the highway versus a guardrail?
Yeah.
Right? So once you have those 3 in place, everything becomes crystal clear. You start to see the root causes of issues. And that means you have to get really good at solving issues. So many leadership teams get really good at the whack-a-mole. They get really good at the firefight. It's almost like their day starts. I lived in a role where the first hour and a half of my day every morning was, what went wrong? What do I have to remediate and fix before I get on to my day?
Mm-hmm.
And those issues never go away when you're just kind of pasting over them or putting Band-Aids on them. They never go away, and they'll eventually cripple you. So you have to get really good at getting to core and make those problems go away forever. And in process, it's just, what are the single most important processes? Usually a handful that add value to the customer that you need to operate a business. Do you simplify them? Do you realize that probably 47 steps that you think is the process, there's only 7 that matter?
Yeah.
And are you making sure that people who need to do that know what those 7 are? And are you monitoring that they're actually doing them? It's a lot easier, by the way, to manage somebody when you know they only have to do 7 things. Because imagine if something goes wrong, you can troubleshoot that pretty quickly.
Right, right.
Did you remember to do step 3? Oops, no. But good luck finding what went wrong in a 47-step process. Sure. And then it's traction. So how do you take that vision with these people, right? The data you're collecting, and these people are following the process. How do you actually then create that momentum to go forward? Less is more. It's about focus, right? So what can we honestly achieve this year? Can't achieve everything, right? When you have 23 things you want to do, right? When everything's important, nothing's important.
Mm-hmm.
So can you crystallize 3, 4, 5 goals for the organization in a year? And if you can, what's most important in the next 90 days? This is one part where my visionary founders tend to struggle. Visionary founders tend to think that much more can be done than actually can, right? They can think of the idea, so how hard could it be, right? For them to accept that, look, you're much better off accomplishing 4 things that really move the needle and doing them right, and then moving forward is so much better than trying to do 23 things where nothing's actually getting done. Everyone's distracted. You're just spinning your wheels all the time.
Yeah, that execution.
So just execute, and that's tough, but if you can focus. So that's what we talk about with the components of a business, and you can see that each one's important. If you've got fantastic processes that are leaned out, they're simplified, they're well documented, but you have people that have to operate in your customer service team or your sales team, and they're not up to the task, it doesn't matter how good your
It doesn't
process
work.
is,
Yeah.
right?
It's got to be the whole package.
It's got to be the whole package.
Well, that's cool, Gary. Thanks for going through that, in such detail. So that takes us all the way back to the beginning, I think, where we were talking about piecemeal. You can probably get some stuff that
Yep.
moves the needle a little bit, but there's a distinct interrelation between these 6 components that drive like real change.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a commitment. I mean,
Oh yeah.
again, my clients self-select. Before I begin with any client, it's a 2-year mental commitment that I'm asking for from the leaders. It's a 2-year journey, give or take. It's not a webinar or a one-day leadership seminar, right? But I do that I don't have a contract offer, a letter of intent. I'm simply asking, is this leader, this owner, are their leaders willing to go on a journey of change? Because this is foundational, won't happen overnight, right? So you have to be bought in to strengthening the entire system. Everybody goes at a different pace. Everybody, I've got teams with wonderful vision component, if you will. You could ask anybody, why are we in business? Who do we serve? Where are we going? And everyone can tell you, great things, and yet they're weak in solving issues. And so they're firefighting still too often. Some people get great at say the data component, right? But their processes are out of control and they don't know how to go and fix them. So people go through in different phases, if you will, and they're stronger naturally in one or the other. But the system gives you the tools to take those areas where maybe a particular company or leadership team is, say, not inherently good at something. And we've got simple tools that will help you get good at them, if you will.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right, Gary. So I kind of took you down the road on a few things. You had a list that you came in with.
Oh,
is there anything? Is there anything that you think we haven't touched on that's an important concept for us to discuss today?
Yeah. Well, so you'd asked me to kind of think about some of my experiences I've had along the way.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember we talked about is it true that large organizations do all this well, right?
Some,
yeah. Right? But can you then just follow a Fortune 500's model of running their company and scale that down, if you will?
Yeah, like Boeing, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kidding.
Right? Could you run your 80-person architectural landscape firm like Boeing runs? I would say no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right? At some point in scale, you get too complicated as an organization, right, to truly have well-defined seats in a particular function where one individual is accountable and only one is accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When we talk about structuring an organization, what we call the accountability chart is we have a rule. One person can actually be in 2 seats. One person, they're the chief salesperson. They're also the chief marketing person. But they alone are accountable for certain things in sales. If you have somebody else accountable for the same thing, then no one's accountable, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have a single point of accountability. In a larger organization like Boeing, there's no way one salesperson can be accountable for all their sales. They're selling to defense. They're selling, to private plane owners. They're selling right to Boeing.
And so there's complexity there.
Complexity gets to a point where, that their model won't scale back down. On the flip side, what's interesting is there are stories of, and there's one that we share, but there's a story of somebody who started EOS with an idea and wanted to bring EOS in, and they were told by the implementer, "Don't. You're one person. What are you doing? You don't need EOS."
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, no. I'm going to be a company. By the end of this year, I'm going to have probably 25 people here, and I want to get it set up right." And he ran his company to $1 billion and sold it for a multiple. Never changed from EOS. So EOS can scale up. EOS can scale up, but large organizations, their models generally
And
don't scale down. They don't
yeah.
translate down.
Okay.
And I find that interesting because sometimes I will see a founder go hire a seasoned CEO. All right, I had a almost client, if you will, and they were considering EOS, and this founder did a great job building this company. It was a high-end boutique-ish like catering company.
Okay.
Right, and so they would be the kind of company you would call to cater the box at the Seahawks owner's box.
Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
That's who you'd call for the food. And she did a tremendous job. She grew this company. She wanted to elevate into more of a board position and get somebody to take over day to day. And they weren't yet big enough to truly, let's say, bring on a Fortune 500 CEO, right? But they thought if we bring somebody in who had executive level, experience at one of these larger organizations, they'll be able to come in and run this, right? As opposed to a person who is familiar with running and scaling a business from 100 employees to 500 employees.
Yeah.
Right. Let's bring somebody in who's been at a very, very high level at a 10,000 person firm.
Mm-hmm.
That person cannot live in the role that a CEO of a 200 person firm lives in. They're used to assistants. They're used to teams. They're used to, giving marching orders and having PowerPoint presentations thrown at them where they get to critique. They're not used to being that close to the business, right?
Interesting.
At some point, you naturally can't stay as close to the business as you'd like to, if you will. But it's almost impossible to truly be a leader in a small and growing company if you're not in it every day, right?
Right.
And seeing it every day. And so that there is that kind of line
That's
that
one of those,
has to cross.
one of those demarcations between, a large, public company, for instance, where it's just different.
It's just different. And I've met a lot of owners that they feel like they've grown it to the point where, hey, it'll be attractive to, somebody with proven experience, somebody who's run a large company for a while. That's who's going to run this. That's who could replace me. And the skill sets are wildly different. And generally you see turnover there. It happens, or they just don't end up being successful because they're applying things that worked at a 10,000 person firm that don't work at a 200 person firm.
Wow. That's good.
So, I could go on for days about this stuff. I'm really passionate about it. Any chance I get to talk about EOS, I always warn people, right? How much time do you have, right?
Yeah.
But do you have any last questions for me this morning?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we've hit it pretty hard. It's been good. It's been good having you on and getting a good clarification on some of the issues that I hear people come up with, when they're, have that desire, to take it to the next level, and they're looking for a way to do it. It's just going to be hard. That's
it takes
one
work.
piece. It's going to take work. It's going to be hard, but it can be very worth it. And if you can create some efficiencies where you don't have all those fire drills happening and all that stuff,
right.
That's a big step in the right direction. If somebody on the show is wanting to visit with you further about EOS or about some of the things that we discussed, what's a good way to get in contact with you?
That reminds me.
Yeah.
Let me finish the very first question.
Okay.
How did I get in EOS? So it helped me successfully build this company, this startup, and it was time for me to exit. And I tried consulting, and I didn't like that either because it's just a different type of corporate
Sure.
job. And then I discovered the idea of spending my life being an implementer, right, and helping other entrepreneurs. One of the key decisions, or let's say when I was doing my due diligence, is this the right role for me? Right? Is this what I want to do with my life? The core values have to be a fit, right?
Yeah.
And one of the core values of EOS is help first.
Mm-hmm.
And that really resonated with me. And it's true in a way that most people don't even believe. EOS is free. It's free. You can go and buy the book, Traction.
Right.
It's all in there. You can go online and find tools. It's all there. I give free vision building workshops all the time, right? I approach people always just, what do you need help with? And they may not need help with an operating system, right? So, if you're interested in learning more, right, go to EOS Worldwide and check it out. Visit my microsite page where you'll learn a little bit more about me. There are free tools there. You can access everything and try it out yourself. You can read the book Traction. If you want to have a conversation, you're interested in, say, a free vision building workshop, absolutely, there's a contact me there. But like I said, my clients self-select. If you're aware of EOS and what it does, and you want to grow and you're willing to go through that pain, absolutely, I'd love to help you. Otherwise, any part of EOS that can help you today, go out there and get it. So, I'd probably just share my microsite page or something, but
and we'll put it in the show.
You put it in the show, but
so what is it?
Oh, gosh, you push me on that. I think it's eosworldwide.com/Gary Leeman or something like that. We'll get
I'll
the
put
link.
it in there. I'll get it
But,
in there.
there's an organizational assessment you can run for free. And by the way, none of this stuff we don't market. We don't sell EOS. If you download a free tool, you're not going to be getting spammed with messages from me or newsletters. It's literally free. That's what Gino wanted. He just wanted to help other entrepreneurs. And that was very appealing to me. That's ultimately why I decided to do this.
Well, that's really cool. So there are a lot of resources out there, as well as sounds like you can contact Gary, and it's not going to cost you anything.
That's right. Or go to EOS Worldwide and get everything.
And there are a lot of great resources out there on this. So I do encourage you. We'll put in the show notes how to kind of get to that microsite, how to get in contact with you, so that folks can do that if you want. We appreciate everybody tuning in today. We're still putting this thing out every other week, trying to make sure that we're providing you with content that will help you elevate your business. If anybody out there, if you know of anybody that you think should be on the show, or if you think you have a cool story for your business, love to visit with you. Just let me know and contact me. My contact information is in the show notes as well. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Take care.